Does Parliament have the power to convert an existing Indian state into a union territory?
Yes.
If it does have that power, how do you read Article 3? If you can just assist us on, that's the basic textual question.
Yes, there are specific judicial pronouncements on that.
No, but we will go to the judicial pronouncements.
Why don't
you first look at the text of the statute?
Before that, may I request your lordships to have a just bird's eye view of the Reorganization Act itself? No one has shown that, my lord, to your lordships. I want your lordships to see that.
We look at the Reorganization Act. That will provide us.
I'm not reading every part. I'm just taking your lordships through the titles. Lord, nobody has read, my lord.
And first, that's worrying us. Let's look at the source of the power.
Kindly come to, my lord, Article 3.
Just in a minute or so.
Yes.
Just how you interpret
Article 3. Article 3.
Also, I would like to know whether it's some kind of a, what is the nature of exercise of that power? Is it a permanent exercise of power? Is it a temporary exercise of power? What is
no,
that?
It is, my lord. I must, Lord, let me answer that straight. Lord, this question was put in the Parliament when the reorganization bill was passed. Lord, I'll just read, my lord, the statement of the Honorable Minister on the floor of the House.
So the union territory here is not intended to be a permanent territory.
No, my lord.
All right.
And that's what, my lord, I'm making.
Question number two. Number two. How impermanent is it? And question number 3, when are we going to have elections?
I understand, my lord. So that is why, my lord, I was going to show to your lordships the steps taken to ensure that we reach that stage. I will show those steps.
All right. Now let's go to Article 3.
Article 3. Article 3. Formation of new states and alteration of areas, boundaries, or names of existing states. Lord, first, my lord, before that, please read, my lord, explanation 1 so that your lordships can read in that context. In this article, in clause A to E, state includes a union territory, but in the proviso, state does not include a union territory. Correct, my lords?
So wherever you read state, read union territory.
Union territory, except the proviso.
So now let's read clause A in the light of that.
Yes, and my lord, this very reorganization has been subjected, and my lord, this honorable court has said that it is permissible. This reorganization has passed the muster of your lordships under 3 and 4. The judgment I'll show. Parliament may by law form a new state by separation of territory from any state or by uniting 2 or more states or parts of states or by uniting any territory to a part of any state. So, my lord, I would read, Parliament may by law form a new union territory by separation of territory from any state or by uniting 2 or more states, we are not concerned, or parts of the state, again, we are not concerned. So there is a power of having 2 union territories out of 1 state, then B, increase the area of any state, diminish the area of any state, alter the boundaries of any state. But here, this would also result.
Does clause A contemplate a situation when the entirety of a state can become a union territory?
There are 2. Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. And there is nothing, my lord, which prohibits.
Does clause A contemplate a situation where an entirety of a state can become, say, more than 1 union territory? What you've done?
It can, my lord. I'm not answering that question because that doesn't arise here.
Your argument is that because of explanation, we will have to read union territory.
Yes. And in a given case, my lord, I don't want to pitch that high.
Clause A, the problem. Form a new union territory, we will not read it as state. Form a new union territory, singular will include a plural. So form more than 1 union territory, no problem. Form a new union territory by doing what?
By separation of territory from any state. Territory means geographical area.
Right. So from the state of J&K, you carve out a territory and form, say, a union territory of Ladakh.
Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. But I don't want to pitch that high. But otherwise, it would not prohibit even a state being made union territory. But that's not the question we are dealing with, Manoj.
So the first part of clause A, in other words, according to you, form a new union territory by separation of territory from any state.
And
contemplate a situation where you have a larger state and you contemplate the creation of a union territory by separating out a territory. In this case, you separated out a territory to form the union territory of Ladakh, and then the remaining you carved out and said this will be the union territory of...
It will not amount to reading. Suppose you had not carved out Ladakh and you had declared the whole thing as a UT.
There is no restriction in doing that. I don't wish to pitch it that high.
I'm going to test and understand. Suppose you create one UT only. Then it is form a new state by separation of territory from any state. That has not occurred. No UT has been carved out. Or by uniting two or more states or part of the state, or by uniting any of the territory into part of the state. How will it apply? Suppose you had not carved out Ladakh.
Possibly,
whole
possibly.
State, so then the power would be the conversion of any state into a UT.
That possibly
The fact that you carve out a part of a state.
Possibly, your lordships are right. That is not
that
is possibly not contemplated, subject to. But form a new state, that is form a new union territory by separation of territory from any state. So separation is necessary.
So if you don't separate and create, you really, how do you contemplate converting a state into UT? And if, I'm just saying for the sake of argument, if that is not possible, can you do that by carving out a UT and making the other also UT?
There is no restrictions. And this is how, my lord, it is understood by your lordships also. Because, for example, my lord, Assam, Tripura and Arunachal became UT first and thereafter became state. Assam remained a state, that's the distinction. But Assam could have also become a UT. There is no restriction.
That's what I'm saying. See, just carving out Ladakh as a UT is, I would say, less complicated in its nature. So therefore, to test the proposition, I am saying, suppose you don't carve out UT, Ladakh. You decide that the whole state should be a UT. So can you do that and say J&K state will remain as it is as boundary, but from state it becomes a UT? When we want it, we'll reconvert it back to the state.
My lord, my first reading is separation is necessary. That's my first reading.
That is what is a little...
Because that question we are not faced, my lord, right now in this.
So the question will arise to test it that if you cannot convert a state into a UT, then can you carve out a UT? That's fine. But in the bargain also say that what I could not do without carving out a UT, I can do it now by making both of them the UT.
No, because I had a separate reason to carve out Ladakh as a separate UT.
You may. No difficulty. That's your decision. That's why I'm saying this less complicated by its nature. Carving out a UT.
Here it's less complicated.
Reducing both parts of the carved out and the pre-carved out. So suppose Assam you carved out a UT. But you say no, we carve out a portion of the Assam as UT and also convert Assam into a UT. That's the testing proposition.
It would be an extreme Lord, example, but for the purpose of testing, Lord, there can be two answers. A, separation would be necessary, and if separation takes place, Lord, that doesn't take place if one state is declared UT. So one state cannot be declared.
What is troubling you? Whether
your lordships are right, my lord. One state possibly, my lord, under 3 cannot be declared as UT. But here, it is nobody's case that we declared Ladakh as UT to come out of this embargo. It's nobody's case. We had separate reasons.
Mr. Solicitor, there may be another way of looking at it. Apropos the theme with which you began, which was the general situation in Jammu and Kashmir. as we see, the creation of union territories post-independence, you have on the one hand examples like Chandigarh, which was carved out during the Punjab Reorganization Act and remained a union territory. It is a permanent union territory.
It was a part of state.
It was a part of a state and became a union territory to be the common capital for two sister states. That's one. Then you have a progression where certain areas of existing states became union territories in the progression of making them states. That's the Northeast. For instance, you have Mizoram, you have Manipur, you have Tripura. They were part of states. They become union territories, but that's in the process of making them into a stable administration to become states. You can't immediately make them states. Parliament can certainly make that. Today, the situation is not right to make them full-fledged states. Today, we will carve them out, give them the status of a union territory at a future point of time when Parliament feels that, well, they now are sufficiently stable institutionally, we will make them as states, which we did in the Northeast. To put something, perhaps you may look at what we are trying to suggest. Why is it not possible for the union to say that, well, right now, say in a case of a particular state, we have such an extreme situation in terms of national security, in terms of, other...
We want direct control.
That we want for a certain stipulated period that a union territory should be created. But this creation of a union territory is not a feature of permanence. But this shall then again progress back to its position of a state.
Removing the reasons why it was required to be
Should the
converted.
union not have a control for a certain stipulated period to bring stability? Because ultimately, let's face it, whether it's a state, whether it's a union territory, all of us have survived, the nation survives.
Yes.
Right?
Doubtlessly.
If the nation itself doesn't survive, there's no question, there's no relevance of states or union territories. So is it not should we not give that allowance to Parliament to sort of postulate that for a certain period, in the interest of the preservation of the nation itself, in the interest of the preservation of the union itself, we want for a certain stipulated period that this particular state should go into the fold of union territory on the clear understanding that this shall revert to a position of a state over a period of time. You can't lay down that period in a given case. In a given case, it may be 6 months. In a given case, it may be 1 year. But that progression, I think the government has to also make a statement before us.
Look,
that progression back to a state has to take place. It can't be a union territory in permanence.
I'm grateful, my lord. That's exactly, I'll read, my lord, after the lunch. That's exactly the statement made on the floor of the House. I'll read, my lord, that statement. That this is not a permanent feature. After the situation returns to normalcy, we want it to become a state again.